Good morning, fourth graders. It's Mrs. Burke, and I'm here to show you a lesson on how to create and then interpret line plots using both whole numbers and fractions. So we're going to start off with some basic line plots that use whole numbers, and we're going to really look at interpreting the questions. So for our first line plot, over here you can see the title says, how many sports do fourth graders play? Now looking at this line plot, you should right away look at the headings. So we have students, and then the number of sports played. And then we also have our units there. So our choices are, do the students play 0 sports, 1 sport, 2 sports, 3 sports, or 4 sports? And then the side is going to tell me how many students for each one of those choices. So when I want to show a student, I represent that using an X. So looking at this line plot, there are 1 student that does not play any sports. There are 1, 2, 3 students that play 1 sport. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 students that play 2 sports. 1, 2, 3, 4 students that play 3 sports. And then 2 students that play 4 sports. So let's look at some questions that we could pair with this line plot to see if we can answer them. The questions are the hardest part, understanding the information on the graph. So our first question, A, says, how many students play 4 sports? Which means I'm going to isolate just the 4 for number of sports. And then I'm going to count how many students. So since I have 2 X's, that means 2 students play 4 sports. Now notice, I looked at the 4 here for number of sports played and not here, because this 4 represents students, but they wanted to know how many students play 4 sports. So this is the part of the graph they wanted me to answer. Our next question, B, how many students play 3 or more sports? That one extra piece of information, or more, is going to completely change the way we answer that. When I'm looking here at 3 or more, this would be 3 or more sports, and 4 would be 3 or more. So I'm going to count the total number of students that play 3 or 4 sports, because that would include 3 or more. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students. Okay, and then last says, how many students were surveyed? This is a very common question. They want you to look at the total number of votes or students or tallies. So to answer that, I'm just going to simply count all of the X's, since each X represents a student. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 students were surveyed. All right, let's look at one more example of a new graph. So when you're looking at this graph, think about, what is this line plot showing me? And it's showing us the number of pets that classmates have. And our choices are, do you have no pets, 1 pet, 2 pet, 3 pet, 4 pet, 5 pets, or 6 pets? So let's look at the questions that might be paired with this. So question 1 says, how many students have 3 pets? They're isolating just that one part of the line plot, the 3 pets. So this part of my graph shows me students, so I'm not going to look there. Instead, I want to look at the part that shows pets, and I want to focus on the 3 pets. Each X represents a student. So we have 1, 2, 3 students. 3 students have 3 pets. for question B, how many students have fewer than 2 pets? Over here, my numbers that would be fewer than 3, it doesn't include 3 because 3 is equal to 3. But fewer than 3 would be 2 pets, 1 pet, or no pets. So I'm going to count the total number of students in this whole section. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 students that have fewer than, oh, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. How many have fewer than 2 students? So we're not even allowed to count the 2 pets. Fewer than 2 pets would be either 1 pet or no pets. So that answer is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 students. So always go back to the question like I just had to do and make sure you're answering the correct one. And finally, how many students were surveyed in all? That's going to be the total number of X's I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 students were surveyed. All right, good. So that's the basics of a line plot when dealing with whole numbers. And now I want to take a look at what it would look like with fractions. And this time we're actually going to create our graph. So we're going to be given a table first that gathers our data. So the title of our table is going to tell us what the title of our line plot should be. So I want to show the amount of rainfall, all right? And then these headings are going to tell me my 2 axes. So I'm going to have the days, day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so over 6 days. And the rainfall was measured in inches. And so we know what numbers to include, we're going to look at where the smallest number would be, the smallest fraction, which would be 1/4, and the largest fraction, which is 4/4. You are going to include all of those fractions between 1/4 and 4/4, even if you don't have one of the fractions represented. So it would look something like this. Here's my line graph based on my chart. And now I need to fill it in. So first, on day 1, I had 3/4 inches of rain. So I'm going to go over to my 3/4 inches. Sorry, technical difficulties. And I'm going to use an X to represent one day. So one day it rained 3/4. My next one, oh, I forgot this one. So day 1 is actually 2/4. So I have my 2/4 and my 3/4, and day 3 is 2/4 again. Day 4 is 1/4. Day 5 is 4/4. And day 6 is 3/4. So this graph now, or this line plot now shows the amount of rainfall over a few days, 6 days to be exact. Fantastic. So now let's answer some questions that could go with this line plot. So the first question might say, how many days did it rain more than 2/4 of an inch? So here's 1/4, 2/4. I need how many are more than that? So that would be either 3/4 of an inch or 4/4. So that would be 1, 2, 3 days. Next question. What is the greatest amount of rain recorded? Not the greatest number of days, but the greatest amount, which would be the greatest number of inches. So on this graph, the greatest amount is 4/4 or 1 whole inch. So my greatest amount that it ever rained was 4/4 of an inch. And finally, this is going to take a little more time. What is the total amount of rainfall? It would like me to add all of these fractions together to get a total. So I know you've been practicing with multiplying unit fractions, but you can also do repeated addition if you're not comfortable. So I need to add 1/4 plus 2/4. That's 3/4. Plus 2 more, 4/4, 5/4. Now I'm moving to 3/4. So far I have 5/4. Plus 3/4, that would be 8/4. Plus 3 more fourths, 11/4. Plus 4/4, 15/4. And looking at 15/4, that's an improper fraction, but I can make it a mixed number. So I can have 4/4 as a whole, another 4/4, so it'll give me 8/4. That's a whole. Another 4/4 would give me 12/4. And then I don't have enough for another whole because I'm up to 12/4, and one more whole would be 16/4. But I am going to have a remaining 3/4. So 15/4 inches is equivalent to the mixed number 1, 2, 3 wholes and 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so that takes a little bit more work when we're finding the total there. All right, well, let's try one more. This graph, or this table, shows us the time it takes to complete homework. And over here you could see the students that they asked. And over here, how many hours does it take you to complete your homework? So I'm gonna use this, the title of my data chart is going to be the title of my line plot. And the heading here, hours, is going to be labeled as well. Now, what fractions am I going to use? You can see everything's in fifths. So my smallest would be 1/5 to my largest, which would be 5/5, the whole. So, student 1, how many hours did it take you? 2/5 of an hour. So I'm going to come to my chart and put an X on 2/5. Student 2 took 4/5 of an hour. Student 3 took 3/5 of an hour. Student 4 took 4/5. Student 5, 3/5. Student 6, 1/5. And finally, student 7, 4/5. Okay, so how many students did they ask? You can look here, 7 students, but let me make sure each student is represented. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so now let's try to interpret our line plot. So our first question is going to ask, how many students have less than 3/5 hours of homework? So I'm going to find 3/5 hours, and I'm going to focus on the points that are less than that, which would be 2/5 and 1/5. So altogether, 1, 2 students. Question 2. How many students take 4/5 hours to complete their homework? So I'm looking just at my 4/5, which is right there, and there are 1, 2, 3 students. And my final question, what is the total amount of time it takes for all of the students to complete their homework? So this one's a little more difficult. They didn't want to know how many students did their homework. They wanted to know the total number of hours. So I need to add up all of these fractions. So it's going to be fifths. So I'll start with, maybe let's try this time starting with our largest fraction. 4/5 plus 4/5 is 8/5. Plus another 4/5 would be 12/5. Plus 3/5 would be 15/5. 18/5. Plus another 2, 20/5. And plus one more, 21/5. So that is an improper fraction. So let me change this using decomposing to make a mixed number. So 5/5 will be a whole, another 5/5, that's 10/5, 15/5, 20/5, and then I'll have one extra 5th for the 21/5. When I count them all up, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 wholes and 1/5. So it takes them 4 1/5 hours for these 7 students to complete their homework. All right, 4th graders. I hope that helps you with your IXL lessons today and tomorrow. And I'm going to be sending out an invitation for a Google Meet for Wednesday. And we'll have a chance to see each other, catch up quickly, and then go over any questions you might still have regarding line plots, okay? So good luck with your work. Try your best. We're already so proud of all the work you've been doing. Already your 4th week, and keep up the great work. See you soon. See you tomorrow. Bye.